I still remember that morning in Sri Lanka. I was in Ella, and I was a smoker back then. I would wake up early, make myself a cup of coffee, light a cigarette, and sit quietly looking over the mountains. Then I heard it, a familiar melody drifting through the valley. It echoed between the mountains before slowly fading away. A few minutes later, it returned, this time from another mountain road. Again and again. The more I listened, the stranger it became. How did Beethoven end up in Sri Lanka? Was it a deliberate choice? Or was it simply a melody preloaded into a small electronic box that somehow found its way onto bread vans across the country? Then, another question crossed my mind. Do the vendors even know who Beethoven was? Does it really matter? To someone in Sri Lanka, that melody might simply mean that the bread has arrived. To a European tourist, it might bring back memories of piano lessons or childhood concerts. But to me, it became a mystery. And sometimes, that's how the best stories begin. It took me longer than I expected to finally start this project. I had it written down in my notes years ago, but life got in the way. Now I was finally following the curiosity that had stayed with me all of this time. One thing I've come to appreciate about this kind of research is that it rarely takes you where you expect. A simple question often leads to another, then another, until you find yourself somewhere completely different from where you started. That's the beauty of documentary and feature-style research. You begin with curiosity, not certainty. So, let's go back to the beginning. If you've ever been to Sri Lanka, you've probably seen the three-wheel tuk-tuks fitted with roof speakers, playing furalace as they drive through towns and villages. I learned that these mobile bakeries travel their routes twice a day, selling fresh bread, pastries, and snacks. Over time, this became part of a uniquely Sri Lankan tradition known as chun pan, which roughly translates to music bread. The tradition began in the early 1990s. In the beginning, vendors experimented with different melodies, before furalace gradually became the tune most people came to associate with the arrival of fresh bread. Today, for many Sri Lankans, hearing Beethoven no longer signals a concert hall. It signals that the bread van has arrived. That was the moment I realized the story wasn't really about Beethoven, it was about meaning. The same melody can carry completely different meanings, depending on who's listening. To a piano student, furalace might be one of the first pieces that they ever learned. To a tourist, it's a familiar piece of European classical music, unexpectedly echoing through the hills of Sri Lanka. To a child growing up there, it simply means it's time to run outside, because the bread van has arrived. The music hadn't changed, its meaning had. As I finished researching, I realized this story was never really about Beethoven. It was about how culture reshapes meaning. Somewhere along the way, one of Europe's most recognizable piano pieces stopped being just a classical composition and became part of everyday life in Sri Lanka. But it also left me wondering about the future. As delivery apps, changing lifestyles, and economic pressure reshape the country, will the familiar sound of furalace continue to echo through Sri Lanka? Or will it slowly fade into memory, remembered only by those who grew up running outside whenever they heard it? Perhaps one day, the sound of furalace will disappear from Sri Lankan streets. But if that happens, it won't just be the loss of a melody, it will be a loss of a tradition that gave the same piece of music an entirely new meaning.